Hello everyone, welcome to the EverQuest II community webcast. You've already been treated to the ESRB logo in advance, so I don't have to read that stuff out again. And so today I have me beaten stick so that we can get the right answers out of our two guests. We have Akil Lyndro Hooper, he's the lead designer dude on EverQuest II. And we have Greg Rothgar Spence. Nobody's sure what he does, but he makes things happen, including Dungeon Maker, which is the feature that we're talking about today. So we have what we're going to do here is we're going to cover a few basic topics on Dungeon Maker. Then Greg is going to go behind the scenes and walk you through a couple of images that we have for the program. And then we're going to answer your questions. Now, let me tell you, you folks sent in so many questions. I don't know how many of them we're going to get through today, but as many as we possibly can. So for those 3 or 4 people in the universe that haven't heard yet, what is Dungeon Maker? They have no clue, see?
We're not
no
sure.
Idea.
You let us know.
See that empty space in the middle?
Yeah.
That's where Dave Georgeson, also known as SmokeJumper, was supposed to sit. And apparently he has all the answers. So you guys make stuff up now.
So Dungeon Maker is a system where players get to use kind of a similar system to house decorating, to place creatures and decorate dungeons, and then they get to have other players play through them as avatars, as creatures that they collect through the world. So the system has a few different aspects. It's got the decorating, building, collecting creatures to place in your dungeon, collecting items to place in your dungeon, collecting dungeon maps and dungeon layouts, and then taking avatars that you find through the world and going through the dungeons as those avatars. And you could do it solo, you could do it with friends, yeah, that's in a nutshell.
All right, so how much customization will people actually have? Like, are you stuck with like 1 or 2 dungeon layouts that you decorate, kind of like the houses that are currently available? Mm-hmm. Or are there different modules you can buy, or how does that work?
We'll have a few different maps in a few different themes. And so you'll have a theme available, and you'll be able to decorate the theme however you want.
Can you give an example of one of the themes?
Crushbone. So these are all original maps, but we'll have like a Crushbone theme. So rooms that are done in the Crushbone style, and like I think 8 to 12 room layouts, where you can just place creatures and decorate and fight your way through the Crushbone map. And okay.
All right, so when you've got your creatures in your dungeon, I mean, I guess like say you've got 4 goblins and you can place them wherever you want. Mm-hmm. And what about in terms of items, do you have traps or barriers or doors that you can put in, this sort of thing? And what are the item limits? Like, can you put a lot of stuff in?
Yeah, you can put a lot in there. As far as items go, everything kind of has a theme. We have lots of items you can put into the dungeons, things you would see in a dungeon, like campfires and weapons racks and statues and casks and all kinds of things that will let you decorate your dungeon. But those objects also provide buffs.
Can you please turn your mic on?
Oh, oops.
All right. Well, I'll pick up. Some of those objects will provide buffs to your creatures in your dungeon. So one of the campfires you put down might increase the attack speed of every creature that's placed near it. Oh. So you get to some of the items that you collect out there will actually enhance your dungeons when you have other players play through them.
All right, now we know for the housing you've got a house rating system. Are you going to have a similar sort of thing for the dungeons?
Yes, in fact, we're using the exact same system. So after you're done decorating your dungeon, you get it the way you want people to experience it, then you publish the dungeon the same way you would publish your house. You can take a screenshot of the dungeon that shows up as a thumbnail, and once it's published, then players can browse those dungeons through the same interface that they would browse houses, and then they can enter that dungeon in adventure mode. And when they go in adventure mode, then they have to pick from an adventurer character that they want to play, and then play through it as if it were just a regular dungeon that we would have created.
And what sort of rewards? Like, what's in it for them? Why would they want to run through other people's dungeons?
There are quite a few different rewards. For playing the dungeon, you get token rewards. So there's a token system associated with the Dungeon Maker system. And then once you accumulate tokens, you can use them to buy rewards. And rewards go from simple consumable items, potions, and kind of the stuff you'd expect to see, to some really nice legendary and fabled items. We've actually introduced the concept of what I like to call glass items, which are really nice top tier, pretty near top tier fabled items that you'll be able to buy from Dungeon Maker, but they're glass, so you can never repair them. So you use them and they degrade over time. So it's like, so you can get some really great stuff, but you'll have to keep going back to the system or get permanent drops in the world. Yeah, a consumable weapon, basically.
Oh, that's really cool. Now, I know that one of the things that the house decorating crowd is really going to ask, first off, can you give us an example of what the item limit is? Like, do you have a separate limit for the number of creatures and number of items, or are they both counted towards the same limit? And have you come up with the limits yet?
Those numbers are still sort of up in the air. We do have the ability to put an item limit on the dungeon, and that's mainly for performance reasons because we don't want someone just to fill their dungeon up with,
and make it lag city.
Is my mic still on?
Oh.
I think its battery's dead. Can you give him your mic?
Because I'm loud. Robin says I'm loud.
Technical issues.
Here you go. Yep.
All right. So, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? All right. So, yeah. So
I'll just lean over here so you can see how much more awesome my beard is than Rothgar's.
So you do have item limits that we can place on there, but those numbers will be tweaked as we see how this works out. In terms of, we haven't really explained the challenge rating yet, but basically as you place creatures and objects in there, they have a point value, and that point value is based on how powerful they are. So boss mobs will cost more points than just your run-of-the-mill goblins. And objects that have really powerful buffs on them will cost a little bit more. And those add to your challenge rating, which is sort of an overall look at how difficult the dungeon would be for somebody to complete. And right now we don't have a limit on that challenge rating, so it does mean you could fill up a dungeon or make it sparse, and we're leaving it up to the players to sort of rate that dungeon and give their feedback on it. But that's always something we'll look at and we can tweak later on if we feel like we need to clamp it down for performance reasons or
Will
whatever.
there be a limit on the number of dungeons one player can own?
Yes.
Or can you be a dungeon master and have 1,000 dungeons?
Right now we have a limit of 20 dungeons that you can create yourself.
That's more than I have time to make.
Yeah, you'll be able to
That's a
create
lot.
up to 20, but you do have a publish limit. And you'll start with a base publish limit of 1. And you can earn the ability to publish more dungeons as you unlock more templates. There are also other ways that you'll be able to earn the ability to publish more dungeons. That design will have to work out those rewards. So you'll be able to create more than you can publish, which gives you sort of that sandbox ability to play with different styles. But we will limit the number that you publish so that you only put your best ones out there.
That's pretty cool. Now, in terms of the creatures and the items, where do players get these from to stock their dungeons with? I assume the dungeon purchase itself is a station cash item?
Well, they'll come from all over. There'll be dungeons that are station cash. There'll be dungeons that drop in the world. Maybe you'll go into Crushbone and there'll be a map on the floor. I haven't done this, but there might be a map on the floor and you click on the map and now you've got access to another Crushbone dungeon.
Really?
So we can add them any way we can interact with your player. We can add them. So some creatures will be station cash. Some creatures will be purchased through the world. Some creatures will be purchased through the Dungeon Maker system. Some will be dropped. It's basically however you can get an item, we can give you a Dungeon Maker item.
That's really cool.
But you will start with base amounts of all of it. So on day one, you'll have a certain number of layouts you can play with, a certain number of creatures, a certain number of objects. You'll be able to get in and see if you like the system, and then there'll be ways that you can go out and unlock more stuff.
And in terms of objects, the way the objects work in Dungeon Maker is anything you can place, almost anything you can place in your house, you can place in a dungeon. But then there are also kind of a new category of items that are virtual items where you can place these things in your dungeon without having a one-to-one ratio of what is in your inventory and what you're putting in the dungeon. So if you get a torch, the torch is a virtual item. You can place 50 of them on the walls in your dungeon. You don't have to worry about running out.
Really?
But those are only going to be placeable in the dungeons.
Oh,
and so
that
most of
is
the
really cool.
So most of the initial items you get are going to be these virtual items. So you don't have to worry about carrying around an inventory of stuff to decorate your dungeons.
I have to say that this is one of the features I'm most looking forward to in the expansion, actually, and Beast Lords. But yeah. So is there anything else you want to say about the dungeons or Dungeon Maker before we put you behind the scenes to walk the players through a couple of images?
Why don't we just go through the pictures, because that'll explain a lot about how the feature works, I think.
Right. And is it in beta yet?
It should be going to beta tomorrow.
Really?
Yes.
Can I get into beta now? I'm going to make time on the weekend to play it.
Right.
That's really cool. All right,
Let's check out the pictures. All right. All right, so what we're looking at now is your character window with the new Dungeons tab that we've added. The Dungeons tab is how you interact with all the dungeons that you can create. So you can see in this example we have 4 dungeons. And there are some buttons at the bottom. The Create button is how you're going to create a brand new dungeon, and it's going to show up in your list here. When you hit that Create button, it'll bring up a Create window, which I think we have a picture of. But this will not only show the dungeons that you've created, it'll show any dungeon that you have trustee access to. So if a friend creates a dungeon and gives you trustee access, it'll show up in this list, and you can enter that dungeon and help them build it, which we think is going to be really cool. So let's see, what's the next one? Okay, so this is the Create screen. As it says, it's a work in progress. There'll be some tweaks made to this. But basically, when you hit the Create button, you're going to see all the templates that are available to you on the left. And when you select one of those templates, you'll see a top-down map, and that's a sample image. The actual image will look a lot better. But this will show a top-down map that is the layout of that particular template so that you can see what the room placement is like before you choose it. You'll name your dungeon here and hit the Create button, and it'll go ahead and basically put that dungeon onto your character. So here we've zoned into the dungeon in edit mode, and the window that you're looking at on the left is the Dungeon Maker toolbox, and this is sort of the main user interface that you're going to be in while you're building a dungeon. The list of items is currently the toolbox list, which shows all the items that you can place. This shows all virtual items. Those items will be in white. So like Akil said earlier, the virtual items, you can pretty much put as many as you want in into your dungeon without having to have them in your inventory. Some of them will have item limits, maybe a max of 4 or a max of 1 in the case of a boss mob, but you'll be able to place as many as you want up to that limit. And so the list is broken up into spawners, objects, and then house items, which are items you're actually carrying in your inventory. The cool thing about this window, since it shows your inventory items, you won't have to actually open your bags if you want to place chairs and tables that your carpenter has made for you from your inventory. They'll show up right in this list, so you can really just work right out of this window. So what do we have for the next one? Okay, so this is showing that an object has been placed down, in this case a little campfire with a couple of knolls around it. And okay, so this has changed a little bit. Here we're looking at a properties window. This properties window has actually been integrated into the toolbox. It's now down at the bottom of the toolbox instead of being its own separate window. And this properties window just simply tells you a little bit about the item that you have selected. If you click an item in the toolbox window, you'll get a description about what it does before you place it. If you click on an actual item in the world, including an NPC, then you'll see what that NPC does. You also see a list of buffs that are on it. That's important for determining whether or not the NPC is getting a benefit from the objects that you've placed in that room. So you'll be able to see how the NPCs interact with these objects by looking at those buffs. We've also made some other little changes to this window, but in the case of selecting NPCs, you'll also be able to set their pathing behavior from this window. So you can set it as a static mob where it just stands still, or you can tell it to wander around in the room that it's in randomly, or you can say I want it to be a patroller, in which point you'll see this little banner that's on the screen now. You place another path point and he'll walk between the 2 points. And that'll let you set up patrolling mobs in your dungeon, which we think is going to be pretty cool. And what do we have here? So this is just another, okay, so this is actually showing in the toolbox window. Now we're looking at the Placed tab. When you switch to the Placed tab, it'll show you a list of all items that are currently placed in the dungeon. So it gives you quick access to everything that you've already put down. And from this list, you can pick the item up directly if you decide you don't want it there. You can click the Move button and move it, or you can hit the Go To button, which teleports you straight to that object, so you get quick access around your dungeon to easily get to certain rooms when you want to edit them. Now this little window that you're looking at, this little radial menu, is a new widget that we put into the game that allows you to more quickly edit your house items that are placed. The icon on the top is a rotate icon, and what will happen is if you click a house item and then select that rotate icon, then as you move your mouse, the item will rotate only. It won't move around like you're used to, it'll just rotate. So this gives you more fine control over how you edit those items. So you have the ability from here to scale the item in size, float it up or down, Or the little 4 arrows is the free move mode. So if you click that, then it moves the way you're used to with house items. And then the little chest on the bottom is a pickup icon. So from this menu, you can quickly tweak your items, and we think that's going to be really cool. Oh yeah, so this is just kind of showing things we've already talked about. You can see the toolbox window, and when you click on an NPC, it's showing the radial menu that's popped up. And in the case of NPCs, the float up and down and the scale icons are disabled. We don't allow you to do those right now with NPCs, but that's something we can look at changing in the future. And with this screenshot, it's showing basically an object that's selected, and in the radial menus if you wanted to edit that. So basically things that we've already talked about as well. So this is showing the buffs that are on an NPC, and you can mouse over those buffs to see what they do. So a big part of the Dungeon Maker is exploring the interactions between objects. And something we didn't really touch on yet are that the objects can also combo off of one another. So those are things for you to discover, but when you place multiple objects down, they might combine and make a more powerful ability or a different ability. So part of the fun is experimenting with all that and seeing what you can make out of it. Oh, okay, this is an updated screenshot. So here you can see the properties window actually part of the toolbox. This is the way it's going to look when it goes to beta tomorrow. And the test dungeon spawner has been selected, and you can see the pathing buttons at the bottom and what buffs are currently on them. So that'll give it a little bit more of a cleaner interface. So there's the publishing window. You can skip past that one pretty quick. You're probably familiar with this if you've published a house. It's basically the same thing. It lets you take a screenshot of your dungeon, something that represents it, and publish it. So once the dungeon's published, we've mentioned now people can come in and play. And when they enter the dungeon for the first time, they basically get locked into place until they select an avatar. And on the left, you'll see the list of avatars that you have unlocked. And on the right is the group window that shows what avatars everybody else in your group has selected. So you can sit there and discuss what adventure each of you want to play. And once everybody has chosen their adventure and clicked ready, then you'll all unlock and be able to start the dungeon at the same time. And while you're clicking through those adventurers there, it'll actually change your appearance to them, and you can see what they look like. And we've added a description pane below that too that'll tell about the special abilities of those adventurers as you flip through them.
Well, that was tremendous, really. I'm really surprised at the level of detail you've been able to come up with. I know that this is coming in pretty hot. You've been working super hard on it in the last couple of weeks. So that looks cool. So now, all of you people who have ever complained about how badly the designers make dungeons in EQ2, now you can show them exactly how the pacing should be done, where the mobs should be, and so on. Because we all know you're the experts. Now, we want to move directly. I was left with about half a dozen questions myself, but I can always walk over to Building 3 and harass you directly. So
or ask them now.
Yeah. No. We'll go straight to the player questions because we have 18 of them here. And some of them I think we've already discussed a little bit in the course of the webcast, but we'll start at the top here. Josh D. asks, will the names and encounters be editable or just cut and paste? For instance, will we be able to change timers, the ads, the effects, etc.?
So there are definitely going to be some limits. You won't be able to change the names of the mobs. Timers don't really apply because there's no respawn. When you've killed a creature in the dungeon, it's dead. You're going through and you're wiping out the dungeon basically, and you're earning points as you wipe the dungeon. When you leave, whatever destruction you've done, it translates into what you've earned for that dungeon.
Does that include, like, if you get wiped?
There's no penalty for you getting wiped, and there's no penalty for time. We didn't want to make this a rush where you're encouraged to run through the dungeon as fast as you can and skip to the end. We want you to explore because people are going to spend hours and hours making these things look great. So we want you to go into every room and see what they've done. So, it's up to you how you want to run them, but you can take as much time as you want and explore the dungeon, and the more you destroy, the more you'll earn, basically. You will not be able to really change the names of the mobs. And you won't have a lot of control over, there won't be any respawn or anything like that. Okay. So you're basically choosing from the mobs in the list that you want to put down. Right.
Mike H. asks, and this is actually a very common question, he says, I'm being told that you can't take your characters into a player-created dungeon. Instead, you take an avatar like a Majdul Arena pet. Is this true? If so, why is that?
Akil can answer this one.
Yeah, this is true, and the biggest reason is because there are so many different definitions for character power. Like a level 10 character is with no AAs is very different than a level 10 character with 5 or 10 AAs, and a level 50 character is very different. So all these things, all these different kind of tiers of power for a player, it would have been very difficult for us to create a system that was balanced and fun, given kind of all these different things that your character can be. So, so what the avatars allow us to do is tweak things for where we think we'll kind of get the best bang for our buck in terms of fun and power and yeah.
And incidentally avoiding the age-old balance argument.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and if I could just add to that, we could scale it by level, but obviously level is just a small factor to player power, like Akil said. And we're looking at options. We know that players have expressed an interest to want to play as their own characters, and we have some ideas, and we're looking into those, and that might be something that we look at adding, in the future. So we're definitely listening to that feedback, and we're keeping it in mind, but we really did want the dungeon to be sort of an equal challenge level to everybody that came in, so we didn't want some people saying, oh, that dungeon was super hard, and the next guy going, oh, that was cake, what are you talking about? So by doing it this way and scaling everything to sort of that level 50 range and having you come in as adventurers, we think it'll come down to skill. How well have you learned to play those adventurers, use your abilities together, and then everybody will be sort of talking about these dungeons on the same playing field. But we hear that people want that, and that's something we'll look at doing in the future.
Okay, fair enough. David asks, will there be quested layouts and items? Will the layouts only be attainable through raiding, or will they be available to groups in the solo crowd? How will players get to the dungeons we create? Can anyone get to them like player housing so long as the access level is set? Number one, David S., that's cheating. That's like 12 questions in one. So, good luck. Did you get them all?
Go ahead.
I'll cover the first couple. I don't think that there probably won't be any, at least on the outset, that are available through raiding. Most of them will be available through solo or group players. Some stuff will be tradable, so you'll be able to get it off the broker or get it from other players. Like I said, some of it on the marketplace, some of it, we might even make some stuff trade skilled eventually. Really, any way that we can give you an item, we can give you any aspect of Dungeon Maker. We can give you dungeon maps, we can give you creatures, we can give you avatars. It's all tied into our system of like, here is something, we give them as quest rewards. Like,
Right.
Sky's the limit, really.
And so what about the access?
Well, the dungeons don't have a physical location in the world. This is why you just create them. You can create them from any zone by accessing your character window. And then you enter the versions that have been published through the window, like the house rating window that's already there, although it'll be a separate version that only shows dungeons. But you can basically browse those sorted by category, looking at them based on their ratings and then choosing which ones you want to go in. And when you group with somebody else, if they attempt to go into the same version that you're already in, you'll get into the same instance.
Oh,
so,
nice.
So you just have to discuss with your friends, which one do we want to run? And you'll go, well, let's go into Akil's dungeon. It looks cool and it's got good ratings. So everybody will click enter on that one, and you'll get put into the same one.
That's really nice. So now, this is something that we did touch on earlier. Janet W. asks, will these player-made dungeons be voted on and star-rated like the recently introduced player housing leaderboards?
Yeah, just like that for now. We've been listening to feedback on the forums about the rating system, and we know that the star rating system is not the favorite of everybody. So we're looking at maybe making some changes to that in the future, but for now it's going to launch using the same rating system with the stars, where you can rate it in 2 different categories. But we're probably going to look at making some tweaks to that system in the future to make it a little more user-friendly to the decorators and to the dungeon builders out there.
Debbie H. asks, will we be able to design dungeons and declare their level? And will people be able to use the player-made dungeons to gain experience?
Level on them is set from the outset, so everything is level 50. We had to pick a level, and 50 is as good as anything, better than some. What was the other question?
The other is, will they be able to use the player-made dungeons to gain experience?
Yeah, so basically the way experience works is you can gain experience towards your actual character. Even though you're playing your adventurer, you can actually gain XP to the character that you're logged in as. But the experience is deferred until you complete the dungeon. So you'll see an experience message as you're running it as to how much you would have earned for killing that creature. Then when you actually successfully complete the dungeon, you'll be awarded tokens and you'll be awarded experience that will scale to your actual player level. So it will be a method for you to level up your main character if that's what you want to do.
Kelly Kay asks something that's kind of similar to that, really, where they ask, will the level of the dungeon be tied in with the level of the creator, or is creating dungeons a single entity tied to the account? Also would like to know if dungeons scale based on level of the adventurer. So that kind of ties in. You said that they're going to be level 50, and is there any talk about adding scalability to them?
Not at this point,
Like,
no.
for instance, if you're a level 60 adventurer, what happens? Is it just really a cakewalk?
Oh, all of the adventurers, all of the avatars that you find in the world are all
are level
tuned
50?
all tuned to balance.
So
yeah.
even if you're a level 25 mystic or something, when you log in,
You
you're
become
playing
a level 50 orc
avatar?
or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
you become
terrific.
that. So everything should be pretty balanced. What was the first part of that question? There was something that...
It was, will the level of the dungeon be tied in with the level of the creator?
Oh, so talking about scaling, we're not scaling the dungeons in terms of level, but we are scaling their difficulty based on the number of people that enter. So these dungeons could be soloed all the way up to with a group of 6. And what happens is the tiers of the mobs all change dynamically as people enter and exit the dungeons. So you can actually have somebody come in later in the dungeon, everything that's remaining gets a little bit harder. The levels will still be the same, but they will tier up. And if somebody were to go link dead or leave, then that difficulty level should adjust down to the people that are remaining with you. So the goal there is to have a challenge for any number of people. We want this to be solo play, duo play, all on up to groups of 6.
That's really, really cool. Now, I'm looking at the little wee clock that we have on the floor there, and it looks like we have 2 scheduled minutes left. So how are you guys for time? Can we ask some more questions?
We can go all day if you want.
Really?
Maybe
Awesome,
maybe
because
not all
then
day.
Okay, all right. Well, that's terrific news. So you players, stay tuned in because we've got a whole bunch of questions still to go through. So far, we've only gotten to question 6 of 18. Good luck, guys. So question 7 from Ron P. Will the builders be able to set lockout timers, or will there be a need for them, or will SOE control them?
There's no need for lockout timers since the amount of points you get is based on how much stuff you kill. We don't really feel like there's a need for a lockout timer. You can go back through the same dungeon. You can go to the next dungeon. It's all based on what you kill. So the time is based on how long you spend to kill something and to go through your dungeons.
All right. Tommy N. would like to know, will we be able to design, not the textures, the physical forms, the actual walls, floors, and ceilings with the Dungeon Maker ourselves, or will we get pre-built dungeons that we merely fill with various furniture and enemies?
Yeah, currently we've decided to go with sort of a pre-built system. We are giving you as many different permutations of these themes as we can. We don't want players to immediately know when they zone in that, oh, they're in Dungeon 1. If you go down this hall and make a right, there's going to be a room there. So there are several permutations of the same dungeon. In addition to that, players that build the dungeons can customize the entrance and exit points. So that gives you some control over where they come in and where they have to go. So we hope that that's enough variability to the dungeon that it'll seem exciting to you, but avoids the difficulties that would be involved with lining up art assets and making sure you don't have holes in your floors and people falling through the world. We just felt that was going to add a layer of complexity, and we really wanted this feature to be usable by the vast majority of the decorators and people that really weren't interested in that sort of art side of things. So,
not to mention people like myself who would put holes in the floor for people to fall in and get stuck just because I find that personally amusing. Okay.
We'll have to add pits to the dungeon.
Yeah.
There you go. Marshall A. will ask here, Dungeon Maker is going to give tokens for rewards, right? Right. So if so, with the said tokens, what kind of gear will we be able to buy? So you've already mentioned the glass gear. That's really cool stuff. What else can you get?
Oh, you're putting me on a spot here.
So name them all, right?
Yeah, there are going to be expendable items. There are going to be lots of legendary items, the fable items. we're talking about the ability, I heard you talking to the free guys about it. We're talking about the ability to put in some gift boxes. And what the gift boxes will do is give you a chance to earn some permanent Fable items. But we haven't fully decided how that's going to work yet. But odds are pretty good that'll make it in for launch.
Wow. All right. Well, that's really interesting. So Tommy M, and by the way, this is his second question, how is Dungeon Maker different from the development tools you have now?
It's completely different.
It's
It doesn't
really
look,
different.
it doesn't look anything like it. It's much more similar to the housing system. It uses the housing system, but the tools that we use don't look anything at all like Dungeon Maker.
Right, yeah, and they probably wouldn't find them very intuitive. So
Yeah.
we tried to hopefully
I've
make
seen
something.
them. It looks like Greek on the screen. It's just crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Claire B asks, can you create solo dungeon as opposed to group? Now, we talked about that
Yeah,
before.
we hit
So
on
if
that.
you enter a dungeon solo, everything scales to solo.
It'll scale down a tier. You know, we'll have to adjust things when they go to beta. Some of our first play tests are showing that at solo right now it's a bit challenging, but we can make adjustments to those.
Look, Robin's holding up a sign that says, questions from the audience? Do we look like we have time?
Sorry.
Questions from before?
We really need to address this.
Okay. All right, questions from the audience. This better be good.
Can we add quo to these?
Oh gosh.
Because
As a killable
Because you want to make
mob?
him a killable mob,
that's
right?
what they're asking. Yes. They're dying. It's spam.
No promises, but I'll look into it. Maybe.
Akil the Vague. Rules
Yes.
Down with quo. Let us kill quo. Haha. Quo. Yes. I'll do anything. Death to quo. Please.
again. You know, it's a
please.
bloodthirsty bunch out there.
Yeah. Nathan Ironforge is really happy that everybody hates Quo now.
Yeah, maybe I just put Nathan Ironforge in as an avatar. And play as Nathan Ironforge.
Oh,
Right.
man.
That would be awesome.
All
play
right.
as Quo.
Are we done with the whole child killer concept? I'm really worried about the mentality of our players now, I tell you.
10,000 station cap.
Get their name.
Oh, man, that's terrific. All right, now Susan G, again, this is fairly similar. Will the player created dungeons be levelless? I think we have confirmed now that it doesn't matter what level you are. Is there a minimum level for entering? I mean, can you be a level 5 player and go
Yeah.
into these dungeons?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's no limit.
That's kind of cool because it gives them a taste of what it's going to be like at level 50 then.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I mean, keep in mind you're playing an adventurer, and each of the adventurers have their own custom abilities. So, yeah, I don't know how much it'll pertain to their character at 50, but we want everybody to be able to play regardless of level, so that you can play with your friends if you're not, anywhere near each other.
Sileana asks, I know you'll have to own Age of Discovery to make a dungeon, but will players also need the expansion to play in the dungeon?
Yeah. Right now, you won't have to own the. And sorry, I don't mean right now. That's not going to change. As far as I know, you won't have to own the expansion to actually play in the dungeon,
Just
but
to
you will
create.
to have to create it. Yes.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's really generous of you guys.
And to spend tokens, you'll need to own the expansion.
Yeah.
Right, okay. All right. Oh, that makes perfect sense. Silena also asks, any chance of us being able to make our own quests or something akin to it, or at least set up narratives and dialogues that can give our own lore of the dungeon?
Not right
They
now.
never even thought of it!
Well, no. I was thinking if there was any way to do it. I guess you could write books and place them in your dungeons.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that question's come up. I know I've talked to a couple people about that. And since we allow you to put any house item in there, you can place the new customizable signs that we have or the user placeable books. So you'll be able to, drop some hints around. You can tell stories if you want, but it won't be in the form of a quest.
That's actually interesting because, I mean, some of the quest series that we have now are based on finding books and reading through them and figuring things out. Oh, that's cool. See, by the way, I'm just stoking up on knowledge here so I can build my own Uber dungeon. I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to it. Sliz from Crushbone asks, will players eventually be able to incorporate their own scripts to handle how dungeon entities react?
So perhaps eventually, and let me put a caveat on that. So Greg was talking earlier about the buff items you can place to the dungeon. In the initial pass, the buff items will just be buffs. But as we develop the system more in the coming months, there's definitely a possibility that we can do things that, like, you place a buff item down, and when the buff item is next to the boss, he mem wipes every 10 seconds, or he'll spawn an ad, so So the potential with the system is there that we can expand it in a way to give you some things, some more tools to play with when you play through your dungeons.
But it won't be through scripting. We don't want you to have to
Yeah.
learn a scripting language or, open up Notepad and start, writing. We want this to be fun and visual, and so it'll be done through the object system. Like
So
that.
for those of you who really want to do scripting and programming, apply for a job working with these guys. Although you guys might be out of a job soon enough. It's kind of cool what you're putting in here. Sliz also asks, will the dungeon creators have any control on what items will drop as loot, or will it be random based on difficulty and challenge of the dungeon itself?
There's no loot dropping in there, just the tokens.
Just the tokens,
Yeah.
right. Okay, well that's simple. Afista, and this is similar to a question we had earlier, will the Dungeon Maker feature be used in the same rating system as the current ones for Homes on Live? Yes. Or is the system being revamped? I think Greg touched on that earlier, looking at feedback and deciding how to change things a bit.
Excuse me. Yeah. Yeah, we'll look at the rating systems in the future, but for now it's going to be the same as the house system.
Okay. And the last one that we have, in case you have more questions about Quo or Nathan or other people that you really want to kill, Marilla from Antonia Bale asks, with the Dungeon Maker feature being introduced and the tools used to create your own dungeons, can these new tools be used for housing and decorating? I have to say, when I was watching you showing the stuff with the widget on the positioning and so on, somebody put in all caps, that widget is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
So will that be put into the housing system as well? Right now, for example, if we want to flip something 90 degrees or more, we have to edit the house layout file. It would be much easier if we could use in-game tools to do this.
Yeah, so that was the goal of that new radial menu, was also to improve the housing system. So it will go in. We know that not everybody's going to want every item when you click on it to pop that radial menu. So we've introduced a new concept when you're in a house of being in edit mode. And when you put yourself in edit mode, house items become targetable, which means they'll blink when they're under your cursor. And when you click them, they'll target. This will help you if you have a table and you can imagine a bunch of little items sitting on the table. It'll be easier to know what you're clicking on because they'll be blinking. And then when you select it, that radial menu will pop up so that you can rotate it without moving it from, in its XY position or XZ position. So that will work in a house when you're in edit mode. And then when you go out of edit mode, everything will have normal behavior where you can double click to use items. You'll still be able to right click and choose move like you do now when you're in non-edit mode. So people that don't want their things changed can stay the way they are. But we think this will really help when you're building large layouts and you want to move stuff around.
Right. Yes, we'll take more questions from the audience now, as long as they're not related to killing Cole.
There's just two.
Okay.
Are you going to add pitch and roll to edit house mode?
Get to the roll, baby!
Right now we've not added that to the radial menu. I've seen a question about that on the forums already, so we know that that's something that that you guys want to see. And we have no problems with adding it because we know it's something that you can do right now with third-party tools and tweaking your layouts. So we have no issues with that. It's just something that we need to work into the schedule.
Are you going to have triggers in that volume triggers you can place in the zones so that if players get near a torch, gnolls will rush them?
We don't have anything like that going in at launch, no. The system supports stuff like that, sort of. So it's all stuff that we can look into as we expand the system and develop the system further.
Always in motion is the future. So we're at the end of the player questions, but I have a question here myself.
It's time for us to go, Akil.
Yeah. I've locked the door, by the way. I have people leaning up against the outside of it, too. Now, I have a question about the avatars that we're going to be able to choose from. How many are there? Like, is there one for every class?
No, there's more than that. I don't remember the exact. I don't remember the exact number, but there are quite a few.
More than one.
More than one, less than 50. But
So now, are they all available for you to choose from, or do you
Not in
have
the
to
beginning.
earn? Oh, so you have to earn access
so
to the avatars.
there'll be some available right from the get-go, and then again, like all the rest of Dungeon Maker stuff, some of them you'll buy from playing Dungeon Maker. You buy with tokens. Some of them you'll get from Station Cash. Some of them will be dropped from bosses around the world.
Is there any dead, sexy, bearded female dwarven mystic in the group?
You'll have to play and find out.
You'll have to buy AOD to find out.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's already ordered, I can tell you that. Well, if there's no more questions from the audience, oh good, we may get to go home sometime today. Again, like to thank Akil Hooper, whom you know and love as Lyndro, and Greg Spence, whom you know as Rothgar, and roundly beat on the forums on a regular basis. Yeah. Thank you both so much for joining us today and revealing some of the mysteries of Dungeon Maker. I can hardly wait to see that.
Yeah,
you see tomorrow, right?
Right, we can't wait to see the feedback. So.
Guess what I'm doing this weekend? Join me in Dungeon Maker. Let's have a great time in beta. Good night, all.
Thanks.
Thank you.